Landing is one of the best parts of aviation. There is nothing like it. Learning to land for the first time, going on your first solo where it's you landing the plane and no one else is in it. I mean, all of that is awesome. I've always enjoyed it until I learned to fly a Super Cub. And man, for the first like 50 hours of learning to fly that thing, landings really kind of had me freaked. I don't know if I'd say freaked out, but it got in my head. It for sure got in my head. Like the idea that you could ground loop the thing just really got in my head, and it took me a while to get comfortable with it until I learned this one piece of advice from kind of my flying mentor and instructor, the guy who taught me to fly the Super Cub. He gave me one piece of advice and taught me to land this certain way, and it has totally changed things for me. I mean, it totally changed Super Cub flying, it changed 182 flying, it changed all of it. And so I want to share it with you today. And yeah, there's no like hacks, there's no shortcuts in life, but there are pieces of advice that are better than others, right? And so this is my best piece of advice that I cannot take credit for. I'm not an instructor, but this is what I was taught by an instructor, and so I hope it helps you. But at the end of the video, I want to hear from the rest of you guys. What is your best piece of landing advice, and what's helped you along the way and get better and better at that? So anyways, let's jump in. Okay, so this piece of advice is actually broken into two parts, but stick with me here. There's kind of a mindset shift that we need to talk about, and then there's the practical application. So I think they go in hand. Still think it's one piece of advice, but just kind of follow me here because it's all very, very important, and it really changed things for me. So starting with the mindset, I think we need to shift our mindset on landings to less of just kind of being something that happens and more of an intentional flight maneuver, right? You're not just kind of you're shaky and get on the ground and then it stops, right? It's like, no, I'm intentionally putting the wheels on the pavement or on the grass or wherever, intentionally where I want, when I want, right? And so if you can be flying the airplane all the way to the ground, right? You're not just giving up on it, pulling the power and waiting for it to stop. You're trying to put the wheels on the ground. And particularly for tail wheel, when you're doing wheel landings, this becomes super, super relevant because you're really just trying to place the wheels on the ground. But even shifting back into the 182, this has the same kind of concept that I'm not just kind of getting into ground effect, pulling the power and just, slamming it on or whatever. You can still intentionally, feel for the ground with the main tires, right? And so kind of just saying, I'm not going to just go until the airplane quits, but I'm going to intentionally view this as a flight maneuver and put the wheels where I want them, when I want them. To me, that was a huge shift. And so we can't get to the practical side until we understand that. So if you're learning to land or you've done thousands of landings, I hope that piece of advice helps to where we can understand to be a little bit more intentional with landing. And I think knowing that it's a flight maneuver enables you to practice it with more intentionality and actually get really, really good at it. Okay, so for practical application, if we can view landings as a flight maneuver, then how do we actually, go practice that flight maneuver? And it really comes down to energy management. And energy management is the same if you're flying a Super Cub or if you're flying a 727. And the reason I use that aircraft as an example is that I was flying with a 727 pilot one time, and we were flying on a Southwest flight. And he was describing to me from his perspective, flying 7.2s, what was happening when we were landing the 737. And he was saying, hey, look, this is going to be no different than it is in your 182. And so as we were coming down, very nice approach, very stabilized approach, and there was no change in the power settings when they flared the aircraft. So when they flared the 7.3, they used that flare to use all the remaining energy that the airplane had, and that's when they came back on the throttle, and that's when the mains touched. And that's when it really clicked for me. It's like, okay, energy, the reason, but the reason that your final approach speed is so critical is that it is trying to use the appropriate amount of energy and no more that you need to land the aircraft. And so for me in a Cessna 182, this means that 60 knots or 70 miles an hour is the perfect approach speed because I can use that all the way down, crossing the fence, over the numbers, and then I can arrest the sink rate with the amount of energy that the airplane already has. Then I can reduce the power to idle and then feel for the ground with the main tires. And if I do it in that order at 60 knots, things go great, and I have the amount of energy that I need. If I come in faster, what happens? Well, we all know it. We've all done it. You float down the runway, and then you kind of end up ballooning, or a lot of things can happen just because we mismanage the energy. And so for me, that sounds simple, but just approaching as a flight maneuver that I'm putting the mains where I want them, when I want them. In order to do that, that comes down to energy management, which is a very specific airspeed. But all those things together has made me much more disciplined to manage my energy, because it's not any different if I'm landing on a 7,000 foot strip or a 1,200 foot strip. You have to manage your energy, and at that point, you can fly the airplane exactly how you want. So I hope this is helpful. I hope that that's a bridge from, hey, we're just going to go practice landings today, to a kind of mindset shift, a practical application, and a way to really feel in control of the airplane. You don't want to be a passenger in your own cockpit like I was for the first many hours learning to fly the Super Cub. I feel good in it now, but there's a time in which I didn't at all. And so I hope this is helpful, but I would love to hear from you. What are some other landing pieces of advice that you have? What has been instrumental for you to get better at it? I'd love to know. I'd love to be able to refine my own strategies. And so I also hope you'll subscribe to this channel. Got more content coming out every single week, and if you subscribe, you won't miss a single thing. So thanks for watching. Hope this is helpful. Talk to you guys in the comments, and I'll see you next week.